We went there to investigate with the Senate Labour Committee. We went there to investigate on matters sex for work as per the BBC expose. And I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, that as we actually interrogated the victims and the stakeholders of this whole tea farming industry, we found out that most of it is actually pegged on historical injustices, some of them coming from issues such as the forceful taking over of land of different communities. Mr. Speaker, when we were there, we tried to talk to these companies that have been listed here. We were at Finlay's, we were at Ekatare, and we tried to see if there's a middle ground, if there's some conversation that can be had in form of how the community can benefit from this tea farming. And Mr. Speaker, I am not afraid to say that the feedback that we got was very negative, in the sense that, Mr. Speaker, openly speaking, I think we are back in colonial era when it comes to the tea farming activities down in Kericho. I saw with my own two eyes how most of the issues on welfare, most of the issues that are being raised by the residents of Kericho, of those tea farms, were actually being ignored. We had conversations on communities talking about the land used to be theirs, that they don't understand how it went from one hand to the other hand, and ever since they have actually been impacted by poverty because it is a resource that they were relying on, and suddenly now they had to work on the farms as employees as opposed to the landowners. Mr. Speaker, I want to say this. As we are looking into this petition and other matters surrounding these issues that have been raised in this petition, Mr. Speaker, I think it is imperative that the companies that have been listed here in this petition, that the companies that have actually now been highlighted in form of the injustices, the historical injustices to the Kipsigis community and the communities around the tea farming, it is time, Mr. Speaker, that they are summoned to this House, that they actually come here to answer on several matters within the petition. And Mr. Speaker, it's not just an issue of summoning them within a certain committee, the Labour Committee or the Agriculture Committee or the Lands Committee. Mr. Speaker, the issues that are being raised touch on all the committees of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, as you look into where this will go, I urge you, if there is an opportunity, if there is a way under our standing orders, Mr. Speaker, I'm new to Senate, so I will need some guidance. But if there is a way that these companies are actually summoned to the floor of the House on a plenary session to actually answer on several matters, land injustices included there, sex for work, a lot of gender-based violence that is there because of the negligence of the company policies, Mr. Speaker. There is a lot of negligence in terms of how the women are being treated in these farms, Mr. Speaker, and it ties back down to these colonial practices, Mr. Speaker. And it seems and it appears as though back in these farms, we are back to the colonial era, which is no longer an independent state in these farms. The injustices, the torture, the criminal activities that are undergoing there under the supervision of some of our own Kenyans who are walking around as directors, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a very serious issue, and please look at it holistically. And I urge you, Mr. Speaker, let us summon these companies to the floor of the House and have a plenary session so that we can delve deep into interrogating the issues of land injustices, interrogating the issues of gender-based violence, and interrogating the issues of how these plantations are actually operating as if we are back in the colonial era, Mr. Speaker.